All right, welcome everyone to the Entrepreneur's Journey. My guest here today is a top 1% realtor nationwide. He is a top 30 agent within Long & Foster, and he's been quoted as an expert on CNBC, the Washington Post, and has appeared on CNN. With me today is Ron Sitrin. Thanks for being here, Ron.
Thanks for asking me.
So, I always like to start, actually no, let's take a step back. Context. Just briefly fill me in on a little bit of context of where you're at in the entrepreneur's journey. We talked about that briefly beforehand. So just give us an idea of what you do and where you are.
Got it. So what I do is I sell residential real estate as a agent with Long & Foster. The concept of selling real estate, I think people get that pretty easily. We're the people that show buyers the homes and help sellers sell their home. But building a business and doing that there's much more to it than would appear on the surface, because the business itself looks very easy from someone on the outside looking in. It's like, oh, you just showed a few houses and you got a commission. And trust me, there's nothing about it that's that easy. In the journey where we are right now, is we're going through probably what I call our second big scaling up, or for us at least it's a scaling up, where we're gone from a team of 7 people to 12 people. We've done that very recently, and what's unique about this transition is that we're now in 2 locations, where not only are we in Northwest DC, but we also have a second office in McLean, Virginia, and that's really expanded our market and our footprint. But with that expansion has come a lot of complexity in terms of how do we communicate as a team and work together to make sure that all of us are on the same page, all hitting the same target at the same time.
Yeah, and what I'm really excited to talk to you about and just having you on is I've known Ron for about 2 years now.
Yeah.
You're a master at operations. You're a master at systems, and I've always been incredibly impressed with the work that you've done to take a very difficult industry and then build a team around you and scale and have this repeatable excellence that you're going after all the time. Very impressed by that, and I'm looking forward to a little bit later in this diving into that. So where I want to start is I want to bring it back. Let's tell me a story from your childhood that foreshadowed kind of this entrepreneurial journey that you're on.
Sure. So that's a great question. So every night, 6:15, my dad would walk through the door. He was a dentist, and we'd sit down for dinner as a family, which was really nice. And inevitably, a big part of the family conversation would involve his practice of dentistry. Not so much about what he did with someone's particular tooth that day, that'd be quite boring, but just but even, you don't think of it, but even a doctor, a dentist, whatever the profession is, if you have your own, shingle out there and you're selling a service, you are a small business. And what's interesting, if you go back, with your question, go back one generation, his father worked for a family-owned business for many, many, many years. And he rose through the ranks, and when it was his turn to really be the one that should have, been at the next promotion, it ended up going to one of the owner's daughters married son. One of the owner's daughter's husband got that position, and he really ran the business into the ground from that point on. And so my grandfather taught his 3 children is if there's any one thing you ever want is to be in a position where you can control your own future. And that's part of the Sitrin family lore. And that maybe it influenced me in such a way, and my youngest brother as well, who's also an entrepreneur.
Wow. So do you think you were just destined based on your family history? And do you have any brothers or sisters?
Three brothers.
And
yes.
Are they the entrepreneurial type?
So what's interesting, if you really think this through, so both myself and my other brother, we both went what I'll call what my mom would call the yellow brick road of corporate America. Mm-hmm. Me getting CPA, getting a degree in accounting and a CPA license. The middle brother getting an MBA and working for Raymond James, big, large company. Yeah. But my work as a CPA just never felt right. I always felt like I always knew intuitively that was not what I was meant to do. And when the moment that came and I'll never forget this, is when we knew our first child was going to be born. And you know that you have 8 months to go, right? That's the biological clock at that point. And it's like, I have 8 months to figure out what I'm going to be doing with the rest of my life. And to help me transition through that, what I did is I took a sheet of paper and I wrote 3 columns, 2 lines down the middle, which created 3 columns. One column was everything that I thought I was naturally good at, and the other column I wrote down everything I had learned in all those years working as a CPA that I wanted in a business. And in the third column, I wrote down all of the businesses I could think of. And then I just started, where does it intersect? And it came up with 2 opportunities. I could either be in real estate sales as a real estate agent or insurance sales. Insurance sales had no appeal to me at all. So there you go. I picked real estate. And I'll never forget my first commission check, our oldest daughter, Gabriella's birth, and my wife's last paycheck were all within the same 10 days of each other. That was quite a time.
So that's interesting because your background as a CPA, it seems, I guess, in line again from what I know about you, to quantify, right?
Yes.
So you took the time to sit there and quantify your skill set as best you could, and then pick the path that would best align with it, which is interesting because I think people tend to come at it from a different angle of like what I'm passionate about and dive into it. I'd love to hear you just expound on that a little bit more.
Yeah. So, I think when you talk about what you're passionate about, you could be. What I found is I can be very passionate about the whole idea of helping somebody buy and sell a house. That's very exciting. But what I find I really enjoy is the building of a team and the growing of a business that actually helps people out in a meaningful way. And so currently the way I've been doing that, at least for the last 22 years, is to help people doing that through real estate. But I think a big part of me feels that it didn't have to be real estate. That was just sort of the vehicle that I chose. Yeah. That I happen to embrace really well because it fits well for me. The nature of being a real estate agent, meaning you're talking to a lot of people, you have these really intense, what I'll call 30, 60, 90-day relationships. You're really not, it's not an office job. I mean, you're out and about, you're all over the place. All those things fit really well with who I am as a person as well. So it made it nice.
So I think, it's interesting because there tend to be these 2 schools of thought when it comes to people like becoming an entrepreneur, right? One is to follow your passion, and the other is this: you will become passionate about things that you're good at.
Yes.
And so that sounds like the approach you took, where you said, "What am I good at?" And then you fit in and kind of worked your way, and now you love it. I assume, right?
Yeah. And when you tell people to follow their passion and also try and make a living out of it, a lot of people, it's a roadblock. You get stuck. Yeah. So I think just figuring out what are you good at. It's much easier to be passionate about something you're good at, especially the better you get at it, because it starts to become really enjoyable and really fun. Yeah. And that creates the passion. Awesome. And when it's rewarding, it's easier to love it.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. So you mentioned the love of like building teams. How long did it take you from your first sale, that first check, to starting to delegate work out to those?
So it was really fast. It was in 2 or 3 months of me starting. And to be clear, that I did not have the budget for this. But what I found really fast was that, and I think these are the simple rules that people know, is you have to say, what is the hourly rate that you value your own time at? And whatever that rate is, then what is the hourly rate of the things you are doing valued at as far as the market itself? So if I'm being hypothetical, if you're trying to value your own time at $100 an hour, and yet you're doing $20 an hour work, you have to really meet reality here and say, well, how am I going to produce $100 an hour if I'm doing $20 an hour activities? So very quickly on, I hired someone to help relieve me of all that type of it was really administrative at the time. But what I found, this is a true story. I remember when I hired her, I said, listen, I only have enough money for this to last 6 weeks. And if in 6 weeks we can't make this work, it's just, this is where we stand. And the 2 of us together worked incredibly hard, and we landed one really big listing, and it just put the money in the bank account that really gave us the lift off to take the business off from there. And so I had faith, and it paid off.
And so
goodness.
Was that the actual thought process where you were thinking, man, the next step to scaling is delegating, or did you fall into that by accident and in hindsight you're like, that was the right move?
You could come back to an opening question when you talk about, the family conversations around the dinner table with my dad. So my dad was a dentist, right? So as a dentist, what does a dentist have to do? They have to get the dental degree, we know that. Then they have to physically lease space, that's overhead. They have to buy all the dental equipment, more overhead and expensive. Then typically you have to hire a hygienist, salary, overhead, and usually a receptionist. And you don't even have a patient yet. And so, when I was saying, hey Dad, I'm a little bit nervous about the possibility of bringing on some part-time labor, he was like, son, let me tell you what I had to do. And it all worked. And he goes, if you believe in yourself, it will work out. And it did. And so, and I think that goes back to, controlling your own destiny through the entrepreneurial dream versus when, if you choose to work for a larger organization, you can still have a certain amount of, that's a great place too. It just depends what your cut is. But this is the path that I chose.
So you talked about, I guess, this hiring being kind of a big win, a very big milestone for you.
Yes.
What other kind of big win, milestone accomplishments have you seen along the way?
I like to think of it in terms of the different phases, and there's been several.
Mm-hmm.
So first off, whenever we talk about hiring, the most important thing is, are you hiring the right person? So that first person we had stayed with me for 3 years. And she was very, very systems oriented, which allowed me just to be out in the field and go out and sell. When you really think of what is the stage one of any entrepreneur, it's you found something that you want to do and you just have to go out and get clients and service them and do a good job. So it really allowed me to focus on getting the clients, servicing them, and have happy clients that then in turn gave us referrals for more happy clients. And she was able to keep the whole back office running smooth without drama, and that was huge. Just having that, what I found is people notice. And when people notice that you're doing a good job, good things tend to happen. And what followed that was someone else who wanted to sell their practice said, this guy Sitrin's doing a pretty good job right out of the gate. His first 3 years in his real estate practice is sort of trending higher than the average agent's trending. He wanted to move to San Francisco, and to do that, he felt that he had a really solid database with some great relationships, and he wanted someone to take it over for him. And so he approached me about effectively merging with him, with the end result of me buying out his practice. That was a huge win, because then I went from selling, let's say 25 to 30 houses a year, and in the first year that we joined our teams together, the very next year I sold 100. Selling 100 homes is a tremendous amount of experience with just meeting with sellers, meeting with buyers, negotiating contracts, going to settlement. The amount of experience I got in that 1 year was unbelievable, but it also boosted my confidence, and that's huge. I mean, whenever you get a confidence boost, that's really huge. That gives you the ability to keep charging forward.
Yeah, of course. So what was the team size at this point?
So at that time, it was me and her name was Tirza. It was the two of us working together, and Peter had a person named Knight. Peter was the primary. Knight Champion was the buyer agent. And he had two other, it's a great name. And he had a marketing person on his team, and he had a marketing person on his team as well named Melody. So once we combined all of us, we had a little bit of overlap in administrative work, and that just it actually just worked out well, because one of the people wanted to leave, and that left the remainder of who was there. From a cultural perspective, I never understood this until later in my career, how important culture was. But it just allowed us to be in a situation where everyone that was left just blended together really well, worked really well, and we were able to, even though Peter's clients were from a totally different geographic region than where mine were. I was mostly in the suburbs and houses, and he was mostly in downtown DC and condominiums. It didn't matter at all, because culturally we all fit together really well, and our value systems all fit together really well.
So, a couple threads that I was thinking about following on that. So, you said Peter was his name?
Yes. Probably want to know what was the biggest obstacle doing that.
No, I had a different thread.
Okay. Because the first week was hell.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so let's actually follow that then. Tell me about of the obstacle and how you were able to merge these two together.
So, and I say this as helping, if you ever have the opportunity to merge with another person, especially someone who's thinking about ultimately leaving the practice to you, and whatever your practice is, it's great. And under our arrangement, the way it worked is Peter was going to work 2 weeks here in DC, and then 2 weeks he could go anywhere else in the world he wanted to go. And you have to keep in mind this is before the technologies that we know today. This is back in the day of remember car phones and pagers. So we didn't really have the ability to talk while he was away, and he really went away. He went overseas to he visited a lot of countries, and when he was gone, I had no real way of communicating with him. So he was working his deals, and I'm working my deals, and he's like, okay, tomorrow I'm leaving for 2 weeks, and my ability to take on his bucket of deals and really absorb them in just one sort of debriefing wasn't really realistic.
Right.
And so we did it, we got through it, but I was really nervous that I was going to drop the ball somewhere because there's too many moving pieces. So when he got back, from that point I said, this is how we're going to do it. When a client says they want to list their house or buy a house with us, you'll come to that opening meeting to help create the relationship. But I have to be in on all the meetings because I have to know all the, I'm the one that's ultimately going to be taking this from where we are today all the way through settlement. And then from that point on, it worked really well.
Awesome.
So, but I learned my lesson on that, because the first time it was like, you're calling people just to give them an update, and you had never even spoken to them before. It just felt awkward.
Yeah, so actually I remember what I want to talk about. So let's take a step back. Talk to me about the mechanics of this kind of acquisition merger, because I think what's really interesting about it, you said you were 3 years in
Right.
at this point, and you have this kind of traditional growth path for people that's pretty linear.
Right.
You do kind of your marketing, your sales, but this was a big jump for you, and this was a very lucrative strategy for you to follow.
Right.
So I think it'd be interesting to dive into kind of the mechanics and how maybe somebody in both your industry and maybe another industry could go about using that strategy.
Yeah, it was good. It was really win-win-win. I mean, it was a win for me, it was a win for Peter, and it was a win for all our clients. It was just a win for the team. What we did right from the beginning is we recognized that Peter's clients wouldn't know who I am, and my clients wouldn't know who Peter was. So we just joined our names. We call ourselves Sitrin and Goss, as we just created a team name with each of our last names. And then we arranged the financial incentives. Anything that came in just went into one pot. All the overhead was paid, and then whatever was left over was distributed, what we felt was an even distribution for each of us. He's getting paid basically for his database is a huge part of it, and his ability to create new business just from his presence in the community. And he was getting the opportunity to also only work half the year and travel in 2-week increments, which he was able to do, which was great for him. I got the benefit of really scaling the business really fast. Once he permanently moved to San Francisco, then it worked on a 3-year buyout, where it basically turned out to be the equivalent of what I call, when you do your tax return on the bottom of your Schedule E, there's an amount that you're supposed to pay taxes on. Yeah. So he got paid that amount over a 3-year payout, and that worked out really well.
Yeah, so it was a very low-risk proposition for you.
Except for that I had to do the payout, but yeah.
But you were on the hook for that payout? Like it wasn't based on referrals of people coming through?
The way we scheduled it, because his income was so much larger than my income at the time, that we said that payout would come. It didn't matter whether the business was coming from my clients or his clients. It was anything that came in, he wasn't getting a piece of it. Okay. So there was a little bit of, was I nervous? Yes. Did it work out really well? Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you were happy with the deal structure? You were happy with?
I think we both felt it was win-win, because he was able to transition into a new marketplace and still get compensated a fair amount for everything he built up here in the DC market. So it worked out really well. But I think that opportunity extends now. I think, we're in, so it's, 2019, about to be 2020. You have a lot of baby boomers that are sort of seeing, like, how do I end what I've built over the last 20 or 30 years? So I think that type of opportunity still exists in today's market for whatever the industry is. It really doesn't matter. The real challenge for people that want to do it is, do you have the infrastructure to be able to take on that kind of extra business?
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so let's keep chugging along. What another milestones, other big wins for you. So you've delegated your first task. That was a big win. You've created this acquisition kind of merger piece, huge win for you. What else?
I think of big wins. This doesn't come into a big win, but this is what we'll call a defining moment. Is a better way of expressing it. Very early on, this is even before I had merged with Peter, so when I was still struggling, where the money coming in and paying the salaries and what was left over for my family wasn't very much. I picked up a developer that had given me 8 listings, which I'm jumping for joy at this point. That could make my year having this. And what I found after starting to service a few of these listings and going through the sales cycle with him is that I didn't particularly care for his values or his ethics. And you hit this really difficult space where you're thinking, what am I supposed to do? Because you have this pot of money, it's just waiting for you. All you have to do is just see it through and the money's there. And then you have to say, yeah, but I can't sleep at night, And so how do you deal with that? And that was really hard. It's really hard, but it really isn't. Because you ultimately, I just said, look, I can't work with you anymore. And he was in shock. He couldn't believe I was willing to walk away from, what he perceived the opportunity was giving me. What I found that opportunity was really, if I was to choose to go down that path, then it was really going to be defining. It was defining me in a way I didn't want to be defined.
Right.
With that association. And so sometimes when you talk about big wins, they may feel like losses at the time because what really happened is I took what was a really nicely growing business and I said this whole chunk of it, this whole developer piece, because of I'm not comfortable with the integrity of the developer, is now off the table, and it's just you have to go backwards. But I think doing that ultimately defined for me. You always know who you are. Growing up, you're like, you're a good kid, you do the right thing, you don't do anything illegal. But when you get into business, all of a sudden you're faced with a different challenge that you never anticipated, where it's totally wrong and there's all that gray space before it. And how close to that line do you want to get? Yeah. And that's when you never really think about that until there's a big pot of money on the other, as you approach that line. And so to walk away from that was really, to me, it was a big defining moment. And I think that set the standard for anyone who's ever worked with me. That's, if someone is joining the Ron Sitrin team and they want to get anywhere close to that line, then I don't want them on the team.
So then let's extrapolate that forward. So I guess what are the positive consequences you've seen? That was one of them, obviously, an evaluation tool. But are there other, looking back at that time between now and then, other ways that has defined how you go about managing your team, the brand, building your team, et cetera?
Yeah, and the brand, the name of the team is the Ron Sitrin team, but the brand is Good Things Happen. And so we have to live that, right? If we're going to say, hey, good things happen, that's, I feel we've really, as a team, created a culture that says, if you join this team and you work for this team, good things are going to happen to you from just being part of it, not only as your career, but just the things you'll learn that hopefully you can take home outside of your career. But we also feel that anyone that gives us the opportunity to represent them in a real estate transaction, we want to make sure they feel that by agreeing to let the Ron Sitrin team help them, they felt good things happen for them all the way through. So that, many years, there's a phrase that's culture eats strategy for breakfast. Mm-hmm. I would have never believed that. Early on. But now I recognize that culture really does eat strategy for breakfast, because if you can't have a culture that everybody is working together with the same alignment, the same vision, the same values, and wanting the same thing for each other, especially in a team environment, then there's no way you're going to be able to execute on your strategy.
Yeah. Let's dive into that a little bit more. So how are you facilitating the culture for your team?
One is we talk daily. We have our daily huddle. That's a common thing. I know with a lot of businesses are doing that now. But that really gives us, one of our things is we want to make sure that everybody has each other's backs. And in real estate, we have both people who are here in the office daily, and then we have people who are virtual. or they're in the field all day long. And so the ability, we have to sync up daily to make sure that we're all on the same page. And we've also, I would say over a period of 2 or 3 years, it just starts with a value board. What are our values? And we just write down a whole bunch of them. And then over time, we whittle it down to what are some of the most important ones. I think at the end, we feel that anyone that works or joins our team feels that that this is a safe place to work. Like we really care about the people that are here. That we want to, that if they make a mistake, they're safe. They don't have to worry that their job's ever on the line, because we trust people to do the right thing all the time. And if something doesn't go right on any particular occasion, that's just a training exercise, not a bad person issue. And then I feel most importantly is we're all aiming for the same sort of goal. So we want to make good things happen for people. And when you hear that, good things happen, and the high fives, it's just going around in the halls, and it's a good feeling.
Yeah, like I said, I've known you for a couple of years now, and I think it's that good thing happens. It's easy for people to just repeat mantras, right?
Yes.
It's another thing for them to actually live it and, on a day-to-day basis, and view it from the side of, are we making good things happen for our clients? And
right.
You guys definitely do that from what I've observed.
It's
on,
great.
day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes someone will come up to me on the street, a friend of mine, and they'll say, instead of calling me, "Hey, Ron," they'll say, "Hey, good things." I always think that means something's working out there.
Right. All right, so we've discussed the big wins.
Right.
There's some pretty big wins in there, and then we also you also talked a little bit about how your father influenced you. Him being an entrepreneur himself. Have there been any other influences for you on your entrepreneurial journey?
Yes, and when I first started, you think you know what you're getting into, and the reality is you have no idea what you're getting into, and you think it's going to be easy, and it's nowhere near, and it's substantially harder than you ever think it's going to be. So I'm doing everything I can to try and get new business, and I'm struggling. And one of the buyer clients that I had made an offer on another property, and I was talking to that agent, and just as she's about to just as we're about to wind down our conversation, she says to me, "Well, I got to go because I have to sell 60 houses this year." I'm thinking, I'm struggling to sell like 5 or 10. How is she talking about selling 60? And so I'm like, wait, don't hang up. Like, I got to learn more. How does this even work? And she was great. I said, let me take you out for lunch, and so I can just learn more. She goes, "I know you're broke. I'll take you out for lunch. It'll be fine." And so we went out for lunch, and she quizzed me more than she told me, and I think a lot of that CPA background and that systems background and understanding that I was trying to grow real estate, be a real estate agent, and make it a business, where for a lot of people it wasn't a business; it was just sort of an activity that they did that made money. Yeah. Especially back in this, the industry has professionalized quite a bit since I started, but especially back then, I think that was true. Very few of the agents actually ran that as a business. Very few had assistants at that time. So what was great is she said, there's this trainer out there that you can go to that will teach you all the things that I'm doing to sell 60 houses a year. You can learn them too. And I'm like, great, let's do it. And she's like, "All right, give me your credit card, and we'll go." I'm like, "Okay, here's my credit card." Now, secretly, I'm praying that the credit card's going to clear, because I know how little money I've been making and how our ability to pay bills is really thin. And it clears. I'm like, "Okay, thank goodness I can go to this event now." And so I said, "I'll pick you up, and we'll drive there together. It'll be great." And she goes, No. It's in Chicago. We got to fly there." And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, "Oh my God, I got airplane tickets, hotels, restaurant. I'm thinking, how am I going to afford this trip? And how am I going to go home tonight and tell my wife what I've just done with our last reserves?" But she was great about it. Having a supportive spouse in your entrepreneurial journey is huge, I will tell you that. But so I go to this seminar, and the guy, he says 3 things that I think really changed the way I think. The first thing he says, well, you get there in this room, it's this huge conference room, and there's these big billboards all the way across that say, "Think big, think bigger, and think even bigger." And so, it's just that's just changing the mindset, right? So understanding to think big was a big part of it. The second part of it was talking about the voice in your head. And I just had always thought, and maybe I don't know, maybe everyone always thought this way, I have no idea. But whatever the voice in my head, or ego, whatever it was saying was sort of the truth. Like, that's just how things were. But a big part of it was that the voice in the head has a lot of what we'll call, by nature, I think that's just the way we're wired as humans, has a lot of limiting beliefs or doubt or negative beliefs or things that we can't do, or risks get sort of blown out of proportion a little bit. So I finally understood that, hey, I don't have to listen to the voice in my head. That was a big thing. And then the third thing is that you can actually start really programming yourself for what you want at that voice. And programming is a weird word to use, but start at least sort of saying, what do I want to believe? What do I think I'm capable of? So when you start thinking about, okay, I'm going to start, really creating a positive mentality of goal setting, of thinking bigger, and really aligning that with positive thoughts. That really, those two things really work together. And then when you position that with the third thing, which was build a repeatable and a duplicatable business, that was huge. And that's, this was in the 1990s, and this is still just as important today. And the things that we talk about is can you find an activity that works, that generates a sale, and then how fast can you repeat it? And he came up with some great strategies, or shared great strategies on what other agents were doing across the country to do that. So once I aligned those three things, thinking bigger, positive self-talk, and looking to build a repeatable and a duplicatable business, that was a huge lift for me. And I went from really struggling to ending the first year in real estate as Rookie of the Year for the DC region. So which was really a nice thing. So that was a big pivot point, which was all mental. That was just inside your head, the shift.
Three really good threads there as I'm thinking you're going through. And I'll let you choose which one we dive into.
Okay.
So one, you mentioned your supportive wife. So
yes.
that's option one for us to dive into, is just the
Yes.
impact of personal relationships.
Thank you, Winnie.
Option two is the psychology of entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Right? I personally I'm in it, been through it. It's a roller coaster
Yes.
of emotion. And I think for me, the biggest thing that came out of it was me being able to control those emotions and understand, to separate the decisions you make from those emotions.
Right.
So we have that path to go down, and then the third one is the systems piece.
Right.
I'll let you choose which one we go down.
So the truth is, all three interconnect.
Okay.
But you can only build. They start off as silos that sort of grow together, right?
Yeah.
You can only focus on one at a time, because when you're focusing on systems, you're focusing all your time on just building the better. First, you want to build the core service that you offer. So, because it doesn't matter how good you are at marketing or getting new business, if you're not doing a good job with that business you get, then you're building nothing effectively. It's going to flame out on you. So first is building that repeatable, duplicatable system, if you will. The second part of it is, we all have our own self-talk, but the people that we surround ourselves with, our friends, our family, our spouses, as you alluded to here, at the end of every day, you have to come home. And I have to say, when you start building a business, we started with, enough money in the bank to give us a runway, but the income that I was generating in the first year or two was really quite meager. Yeah. And her willingness to, and this is, to put this in context, this was at a period of time where I'd been out of college for 8 years, which means all my contemporaries have been out of college for 8 years. So our income went from dual income, no kids, to barely just my income and a kid, where a lot of our friends that were dual income were sort of hitting that next level of management with nice raises coming in as well.
Yeah, so a lot of social pressure.
A lot of social pressure. We couldn't really, they could all go out to a bar or dinners and have expensive night, and we couldn't do it. Yeah. We just didn't have that ability. So to have a spouse that allows for you not to feel guilty about that is incredibly important, which will impact your, the thoughts in your head, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
So I think, I know I hit on two of your three. What was the third one?
Let's actually dive back into the relationship one.
Yeah.
So you were incredibly lucky.
Yes.
A spouse who was supportive 100% along the way.
Yes.
Were there other relationships that were impacted by this decision to become an entrepreneur, and how were they impacted?
More than anything else, from the time that I graduated college and had my first job in accounting, all the way till I started in real estate, I can honestly say I only enjoyed one day that sticks out to me. It's like, this was a really great day at work. That's a really bad way to live a professional life. I'm not saying I was, miserable, but it was just, I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
I was not enjoying what I was doing, and I would switch, from a big firm to a small firm, from a small firm to, even like an industry-specific firm. Didn't matter what I was switching from or to. The fact was, as long as I was doing anything that was related to accounting, I wasn't happy, and I had to make the transition out of that. Fortunately, one of the things that was really helpful is my wife, Winnie, her father was a real estate agent, and so he was able to share his experiences with me of what it was like to be a realtor. And he was, and how it was good for him. How that, I think one of the things you talked about, the emotions, the up and down emotions of cash flow. So I think my wife, she can call it a blessing or a curse, however she sees it. But she grew up with her dad as a real estate agent. Now she married a real estate agent. So these cash flow swings, she had a little bit more sort of, maybe she was used to it a little bit more than average. Right. But there was many, many, many Januaries where she'll say, I would take less just to know for certain how much you're going to end up with by the end of the year. Because the uncertainty of it is very hard. Yeah. It really is. Fortunately, what you hope happens over a period of time is at least you know what your lowest level is. In that, and then hopefully you're just always growing. And when that's happening, it's nice. The emotions of that are very hard to manage. I think that was the third thing you had said. One of having a pipeline that's continually, running through, like having new business come in. And our lead cycle, from the time we meet someone, from the time we get paid, can easily be 90 to 120 days. Yeah. That's just called normal for a real estate agent. So, but knowing that we have a pipeline of people going in different segments of the journey at all points in time, I'm always trying to think at least 3 months out in terms of what does my cash flow look like 3 months from now. And I find as long as that feels more than good enough, that I'm able to stay emotionally somewhat neutral. But trust me, the first 5, 6, 7 years, there were a lot of times where it was, we were bottoming out and it was scary. So, and you try to be cool, calm, and collected, but it's hard. It just is. It's hard.
So it sounds like your mental state just overall actually improved when you decided to become an entrepreneur.
It did, yeah, because I became happier. And I think there's two parts of it. One is, I think when you talk about you have family relationships, but you also have your relationships within the community and your friends. Is I found that my role as a family man, as a friend, and as a realtor are all incredibly. It's so tied together that it's hard to separate it out at this point. That I feel a big part of my happiness does. I mean, of course, a lot of it comes from family and friends. But I'm saying the success of being a realtor is very much tied into how I self-identify, and a big part of my happiness does come from that.
I feel like that's not uncommon to, when you are running your own business, when you're an entrepreneur, you're just on all the time, right? You're thinking about it, and it's like every conversation that's not about it, you kind of like, how can I bring it back to it? Not because like selfish, but you just love it, you're passionate about it.
It's very easy to do. Yeah. And I think that's how you're passionate about something, and that was one of the earlier questions on, is, I mean, sometimes if it's like, this is the catch-22. I would like to go into every weekend saying, I don't want the phone to ring. It would just be nice to have a nice weekend where I don't have to worry about anything. But then if the phone doesn't ring, I get a little like, I want the phone to ring. So it is, because I realize a lot of my energy does come from just being able to help people. Just the minute we have somebody on the phone and we're talking and we're doing something, we're making something positive happen, good things happen, right? Yeah. Then that just gives me energy. And then even after I hang up, that energy stays with me for a long time.
So you classify yourself as an extrovert?
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I prefer to talk to people than text or email. That way. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, with the definitions of extrovert, introvert I go off of are where you get your energy from. So, the introvert would be the type that if they're talking to people at some point, they need to go by themselves to recharge their batteries, but you seem to be invigorated.
I get my energy from communicating, talking with people. Yeah. That's it. I mean, when we go to when we're at a party, I enjoy it very much, especially if we can meet new people and have interesting conversations. I really like that a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So You said it was about, I think you said it was about 5 or 6 years in before you really were able to take control mentally of the emotional roller coaster that was going on. Besides this, initial seminar you went to, what else? And kind of identifying, if you can keep a thumb on the cash flow lights out.
Right.
What else did you do in between there to help you, I guess, mature in your way of handling your emotions?
The single greatest thing is to have a future vision of what you expect to happen, what you want to happen. And even today, because look, every day we have ups and downs. That's just called normal. It's part of being human. It's called part of having a business. It's just the reality of it's the reality of life. So how do you view these bumps in the road? If what I really focus on is looking out, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and if I'm always aiming, okay, well, yeah, it's a bump in the road today, but look what my future looks like a year from now, 3 years from now, and even 5 years from now, because I've sort of mapped these out in my mind. I have a really clear idea of what it's supposed to look like, what it will feel like, what the people around me will be like, and the more that I can articulate that on paper and in my head, then the more I feel that positive energy that for events that haven't even happened yet.
Yeah.
But those pull us, I think, they pull me through specifically. They pull me through the more challenging. If you have a challenging month or a challenging client or whatever it is, that's what pulls you through.
Yeah, and I always find that if I forget or don't have those kind of big goal objectives, I just get frazzled all over the place too, and that becomes frustrating. And you start like being down on yourself because you're like you forget, right? You forget why you're doing it. You forget the purpose. So I don't know if that's the same for you.
It's exactly the same. It's really important. Is I try to think of things as you're either in an upward spiral or a downward spiral. It's hard to be you rarely just stay in a neutral spiral. It seems like you're either going up or down. So the first most important thing, and this is one of the things I'm always trying to teach my kids as well, is whenever you see yourself in a downward spiral, you got to figure out what got you in there and resolve it. Yeah. Just resolve it fast. And sometimes resolving it, means getting a little uncomfortable. But whatever that is, you just have to resolve it because it's what it happens is it's the voice in the head. It just gets louder and louder, and it's taking up more of your attention. You can't concentrate on the things that give you joy. You're trying to enjoy yourself with your friends, and that negative cycle is just sitting out there. The sooner you can end those downward spirals, the better. I've learned that. Yeah. And what I found, if something wakes me up at 4 a.m, it's the beginning of a downward spiral. Believe me, I used to let these things go for 6 months to 12 months, where I let these things just drag on. I've learned my lesson. You just have to really cut them short fast. The minute you start thinking it, you're having it, end it.
Yeah. Awesome. So, all right. So now, let's dive into the systems.
All right.
This was the kind of third piece from the takeaway from your biggest influence.
Right.
And so, I guess take us through kind of that aha moments of systems being important for you to scale and grow an actual business, to how you figured it out and how you implemented the systems that you now have today.
Okay. How I figured it out. I think someone else said this, but it's like trying to figure out a crossword puzzle, and you may want to start thinking you can just do this like A1, A2, A3. No, you can't. Right? It's like you're just filling a little here, a little here, a little here, and eventually all these things, the clues start to connect where you can actually start connecting what our strategy is and making it make sense of itself. So what we're trying to now explain in a matter of minutes took over a decade to figure out. So I'm trying to give it perspective. The second part of that perspective is I'm a real student of learning, of studying strategy, studying systems, studying marketing, to the tune of over 100 books read, many of them read 2 times, some of them read 3 times, some of them read 5 times, to really understand how these things interconnect. Because what you read 2 years ago, sometimes I can reread that book now, and it's like a whole nother level deeper. Having that base of knowledge, right, in place, and having a certain, years and years of experience, one of the things I found is every time we took somebody to capacity on the team, what we really needed to do is understand what their roles were, and then how can we take that role and split it so that we're really bringing in a new team member to facilitate that role. So at one point it was just me going out and doing the FaceTiming with the actual clients, and then an administrative assistant doing everything else. Well, then the administrative assistant means they're doing the marketing and the contract following up and the working with the contractors. Well, at some point you're like, they're at capacity. So what piece of that are we going to separate out? And so we just separated out, marketing. So I have two roles with two people, one doing marketing and one doing a lot of the administrative work, and there's still me working with the clients. Yeah. Well, then I'm working with a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers. So it's like, how can we separate that out? Well, maybe we should bring in someone to help out with some of the buyers. So now we've separated that role out. And then you get into another position where you find that the person here is doing the administration and working with the contractors. And when a property goes under contract, they're at capacity. So now we get someone who's just doing, everything that goes under contract. And so by continually taking a person in their role, so they have a lot of roles when they join us, doing what our activity levels are, and then breaking, having great people and then bringing more great people to to split those roles up. That's what's giving us leverage, which is helping us. I think that's what's helping us grow more than anything else. And you could say, to some extent, that is what our strategy is. You can say, well, that sounds so simplistic. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of is, I know. But it's really just what I call this continual self-improvement and innovation on what we already know. Yeah. And we just keep getting better at doing the same thing over and over again. And there's nothing out here that's revolutionary. There's nothing out here that's like a disruptor. I know that's a big thing. We're not doing anything disruptive. We're just taking the same things that we know need to be done and getting better and better at doing it, with one big caveat. We're getting better and better at doing it as a team. Yeah. And each team member that you add, and this is the hardest part, when you add someone, at first you think, oh, this is going to be great, they're going to take over this work. And like, no, it doesn't work that way. The second you add somebody in, you've added complexity to your team, and that complexity has to be resolved. And so when it's just me, everything's in my head. When it's me and one other person, it's easy just for the two of us to talk. When it's me and two other people, now we got to make sure all three of us, now it's me, now there's 12 of us. Yeah. They're all got to be communicating and syncing. And now you can see this comes back full circle, why the culture, the values, the strategy, all have to tie in together. Otherwise, that shit's too complicated and it's not going to go in a straight line.
Were you standardizing each of these positions along the way, or was it a feel at first?
The biggest, so we've always standardized them, but we did what we call simple standardization, with just sheets of paper, like these are a checklist, and that was our system. And that systems, like simple systems, can work for a simple organization. The minute we crossed the river and said, okay, we're opening up a second office with Kate Ryan and with Long and Foster and McLean, the second her and I teamed up and we opened up that office, then it's no longer simple, because now we have people that aren't seeing each other often. Yeah. And we have two virtual assistants, one that's virtual local, that's going around to all the properties, but she really doesn't show up to the office. Another is true virtual that lives far enough away that we actually never see her or rarely see her. So how do we get all these people communicating and talking? And for that, we found that we needed online or cloud-based or digitally based systems. We had to go off of paper for that. Yeah. Okay. And so that was a major push. That was one of our goals for 2019, was to actually get those systems up and running. And our goal actually was to have it done by October 31st. 2019, it's November 4th, and we did it!
Yes. Nice. Okay, congrats.
So, there's tons of room for improvement, but we got it to a level that we feel is more than good enough for the moment.
What does that digital communication stack look like for you guys?
For us, a big part of it is a program called Process Street. We use that. We've been really happy with that. It's there's lots of them out there, right? There's Trello, there's Asana, I think it's called. It doesn't matter which one you pick. Just pick one, right? Yeah. But it really did require, I would say, a good 90 days, a full quarter of energy that was solely devoted to that. And we even hired for that role. We had one person who came in who just helped to get that thing off the ground. Because if you just left it to the existing team members, we were running at capacity. There's no way we could have done it. So having outsourcing it made a huge difference.
Yeah. And I think you touched on an interesting point there too, is understanding, and you mentioned it at the very beginning too, is just understanding when like you need to hire somebody, when you need to spend that money, that wouldn't have gotten done if you didn't bring in somebody from the outside. And I think it's a hesitation a lot of entrepreneurs have, young entrepreneurs, or ones that are not necessarily seeing the big picture, right? They're kind of worried more about cash flow for me and making sure whatever, a cushion, but you got to reinvest, right? I'd love to hear you, talk a little more about just reinvesting in your business.
Vern Harnish, he's a writer, he talks about this, and he goes, when you're starting out, it's all just sell. You're just trying to get some money in the bank account, right? Yeah. And he's dead on, and I remember those years really well. But then I'm going to use the words an immature business. Yeah. You're new, you don't have a lot of things up and running yet, you're just, can you get this to a survival level, right? As a business matures out, there's a couple things with mature business. One is you should have a certain amount of base systems, some really good employees that are working together well. And there should also be a certain amount of you feel comfortable with some levels of what you can predict out into the future. So I have a certain base level, what I can predict our future cash flow looks like. In addition to that, cash reserves that you just sort of, they're just sitting there, allowing you to take those risks, for lack of a better word, where you say, okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to hire to do this. So when you compare and contrast this to that first hire story, when it's like, look, I only have 6 weeks and I run out of money, right? I mean, now it's like, okay, I don't have to live in that. Like, I understand what my money cash flow looks like a little bit further out, and we have reserves built in that allow us to do this. And having those reserves, we talked about also about what creates those emotional ups and downs. I tell you, there is nothing more important than feeling that you've got some reserves, a safety net. It's when there's no safety net that panic will set in. It will. It's just natural. But the deeper that safety net, the better off you'll be.
Yeah. So you mentioned you've read over 100 books.
Yes.
Give me a couple of the most influential. Let's say 2, 3, if you can think of them off the top of your head. What are the most influential books, the ones that you would recommend to anyone kind of behind you in the journey so far?
So I'm asked that question all the time.
Okay.
And I always say, whatever's bothering you at the moment, that's the book you want to read.
Okay.
Because it's really easy to, and I don't actually read them, I just listen to them on Audible, right? So and you can speed up Audible, so you can listen to them even faster than the normal, 1.25% of speed, and so you go a little bit faster when you're listening it through. You and I had a conversation about marketing, and what was the first question I asked you?
What books had I read?
What book had you read that you and I could be aligned on the same page? And you gave me the book, and guess what? That was a week ago. Yeah. Today, guess what? I'm finishing it in about 2 days away.
Awesome.
Based on where I am in it. Yeah. So that's about a book a week.
Yeah.
If I'm really interested in consuming content. If I'm having execution problems, then there's books on execution. If you're having growth strategy issues, there's books on strategy. There's thousands of books out there. Sometimes it's really just how to tell a story. There's great books on storytelling. Yeah. How to, one of the things, is like how to be funny in telling a story. There's even books on that. How to add a little humor into what you're doing. I think the real answer is, where are you at the moment in your life? That's going to determine what the most impressive book is for you.
And so it also seems it's a volume game too, right? There's not going to be one magic book, but what you need to do is make it a habit.
One book is irrelevant.
Right.
One book is totally irrelevant. It's the accumulation of the information that you're gathering over time. And that's when we go back to that crossword puzzle analogy. Yeah. It's like you could fill in 1 or 2 lines. It doesn't get you anything, right? You just got to keep plugging away at it, and eventually, what I found is a lot of the books say the same things. They just use different ways of saying it, and the more you hear it, the more you retain it. And then what I've also found is, by hearing it enough different ways, I've been able to adapt them into what I call the Ron Sitrin team way, where one person says do it this way, one person says do it this way, and I'm like, but if I take a little of this and a little of this and I add a little bit from that guy over there, then all of a sudden I have what works perfectly for us. Yeah. And I've been doing a lot of that, and that's really been what's created a lot of our innovation, which helped us, in our strategy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So when you're first starting out, and the margin of error is so small, everything seems like a big deal.
Yes.
Right? What are some of the things that you thought, it doesn't have to be starting out, but some of the things along the way that you thought, man, this is going to be a really big deal, and then it turned out not to be at all?
Well, there's one when I was first starting out, and there's another that's really, wow, this really flopped, right?
Okay.
So I remember first starting out, I got a listing, and I'm really pretty new to this, and I'm trying to get more listings, and I'm trying to get more clients, and I'm trying to service the listings that I have, and I didn't really have a team built out. This is really in the early beginning. And I remember the seller calling me like, how come you're not calling me? Why aren't you following up with me? And that just irked me so bad. Not that she was right. It was that I wasn't performing, right? And that's where, and so this is in the even before the first year, and this is where I began realizing like that has to come before everything else. So that was one of those things where, you think you can do it all, and you can't. And thank goodness that person was gave me that feedback and communication, so I was able to staff for it early on. Okay, but the real biggest one was, and this was more recent, where we just I felt that I was completely missing out on the digital lead generation sort of opportunity that was out there, that so many other agents seemed to be doing it. I was like, we can do this. So we hired a consultant who's, I think, very good and very talented. Not you, by the way. This is before I knew you.
Yeah.
But very good and very talented. They had great ideas. We had great ideas, and I think one of the mistakes we made along the way is trying to perfect the ideas. We should have just went with them without a whole lot of. They should have been, even if they were should have just moved through the pipeline faster, just to see what was working, what wasn't, instead of trying to get everything looking so nice before we got to the next sort of milestone.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter whether they were good or we were trying our best and everyone had good intentions. I just found like all of a sudden, $60,000 later, I still had nothing of consequence. And I was just, how did this, and first it's like, okay, it's the first month, and then it's the second month, and all of a sudden you realize, okay, we're turning the corner, and it's like all of a sudden it's $60,000 in. I'm like, for that kind of money, that could have been a down payment on an investment property, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, I can't believe I just keep letting this thing go and it doesn't go anywhere. That, I have no one to blame for that other than me. I was, this was my charge, my direction. I just didn't go well. That was probably one of my more recent bigger flops.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be more.
And do you think it was just like a lack of understanding the space? Because, it's like sometimes you step into situations that you don't necessarily know enough about it, so you have to trust a little bit, or you don't trust enough because you don't know enough?
There could be a lot of reasons. I had in my, because I listen to so many books, I have my own idea of what I want.
Yeah.
And then I have people on my team saying, this is what we would like. And then we have people on the media team that we had hired saying, this is how you should do it.
Yeah.
And so you have this conflict of, well, we just need one captain driving the boat, right? And the truth was, we probably should, if we bring in an outside source, we should just say, this is what it looks like when it's done, go, right? And we should get out of the way and just but we kept sort of micromanaging them along the way, and I think that had a lot to do with, we just shouldn't have been doing it. They knew what they were doing, more than we knew what we were doing. So anyhow, that was a flop.
Yeah.
That was a flop. Learned my lesson. Fortunately, it still was a mistake like that earlier on in the career would have sunk me.
Yeah. And
so now, thank goodness, I just had the ability to okay, that's, money's down the tube, so we still just kept on going and just be a little bit wiser the next time we go down this road.
And so do you kind of plan for that now when you take on new initiatives, where you say, hey, there's going to be, this could potentially just be a sunk cost type situation?
I'm very mathematically, I think things through. Like, what could this look like in a year from now if it just really flops? Like, what's the worst case scenario? How much money did I lose on this?
Yeah.
We're getting, right now, I really want to bring in as the role. And, we talked about roles. Yeah. I find that one of the roles with 12 people is, how do you organize 12 people? You think it's like, okay, how hard could it be? But it's like, you know what? I'm the one doing it right now, and I shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
That's not part of my job. It is part of my job, but it should be another person doing it, right? And so part of me thinks, gosh, should we be bringing on someone else for that role? And then it's like, well, to really bring on the person properly, they should be really good at all of the current the CRMs and the systems that connect, other online systems. And so now you're talking about someone who's not going to be cheap right from the get-go. And so now I'm thinking, okay, this is, what's the dollar amount that I'm willing to commit to see if this thing can work out or not.
Yeah.
And then you weigh it, well, should I be putting the money on more infrastructure or should I be putting the money on more marketing initiatives? And so I'm battling that right now. I'm in the thick of it in my head.
Okay.
That's what's waking me up at 4 a.m. now.
Yeah, it's still working. So then you have to make the decision, right?
I have to make a decision, yes. I haven't made it yet.
Yeah.
You have to do a re-interview 12 months from now. You'll see where we stand.
All right. So, what do you think people assume about business when they start that turns out to be incorrect?
That'll be easy.
Yeah.
So I'll fast answer that. Yeah.
You think
well, I think it's easy to, and this is one of the things I learned from that seminar that I went to.
Yeah.
His name was Mike Fair. He said, and it was so true. He said, people grossly overestimate what they think they can do in a year, and they grossly underestimate what they can do in a career. Yeah. I thought, that is so true. We all think so much. We think we can do so much. We can grow at 20% a year. No one's really growing at 20% a year. Very few people. I mean, the unicorns are, but the vast majority of service businesses, it's really hard to maintain that kind of growth year after year. Yeah. But people, when you really say, okay, well, if I plan out 10 years in advance, most people aren't doing that. They're just trying to have a base year and do better on the next year and better on the next year. But if you really plan out 10 years in advance, you're probably underestimating where you could really be, but you're overestimating what you can do in a current year because you're probably just too much optimism in it. If you're not optimistic by nature, you wouldn't start it, in theory, right? You wouldn't start with a pessimistic attitude.
Right,
Didn't
of course,
make sense.
yeah. So you think people assume it's going to happen quicker than they think, or
easier. And I don't think people really emotionally understand what being cash strapped feels like until you're really there. Yeah. You can, because you'll have this thing, okay, 6 months from now I'll have these sales and I have money in the bank. Well, you may not have as much money in the bank as you thought. You may have more recurring expenses than you had anticipated, and your pipeline may not be as rosy as you anticipated, and all of a sudden you're getting to this sort of trifecta of where's the money? I don't see it in the future. I've spent it all in the past, and I still got a lot going on in the moment, and that creates a tremendous amount of anxiety. Yeah. And if they're not prepared for that emotionally, when it hits, it's going to be really hard.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about having a support system. And
yes.
You're lucky enough to have a spouse, but that's at a point where if you're with somebody who doesn't understand what you're doing, why are you bashing your head against the wall, not making much money?
Right.
That could force you to doubt yourself, force you to quit. And so it's really important to have that strong support.
Because a salary job will feel much safer.
Yeah.
It always will feel much safer.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so what are you curious about right now?
What am I curious about? So one of the things I read a lot of books. So one of the books I read talked about how you can take a look at a person's background. Mine was finance, accounting, and you can project onto that what that person, that entrepreneur, how he built his or her business. And there's really two flavors. There's market-driven or process-driven. So you already know which one I am, right?
Yep.
I'm a process-driven person. I just always built the systems, and through repeat and referral, the business came as a result of delivering on the values that we offer. So now, what I'm curious about is, I've never really taken a market-driven approach, and how can I process? Is this a word?
Processize.
How can I take this idea of okay, I want to make our organization a little bit more market-driven. Yeah. It's still going to be, at the core, we are going to be what we are, but I want to add more marketing into it. So how do I take marketing and really process it when marketing, by its very nature, feels like such a creative, spontaneous, doesn't feel like it fits into a process by the very nature of what it is. Yeah. So that's what, that's my current journey. Those are the books that I'm reading now are geared at solving that.
Yeah, and I think the book that I recommended to you, Hacking Growth, I believe.
Yes.
Because I think I'm more of a market-driven
Yes.
entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I would just say having frameworks, right? It's like any creative constraint. If you say somebody, hey, go paint something, right? It's going to be really hard. But if you give specific guidelines and then let them be creative within the guidelines, then that's where you see success.
Yes.
And I think, for me, that's how I view it is, okay, what are these constraints that we're putting on? And then how do we get creative within those constraints?
Right.
But it seems like for you in the process side of it is, what are those constraints? What are those guidelines, those frameworks we put into place so that we can then keep the essence of the market driven, but processize it?
Yeah.
Turn into a process.
I'll figure out how to pronounce that word later on. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So another question just popped in I think would be very interesting. You started business how long ago?
1995.
1995.
Yes.
Very different world back then.
Very different world.
If you were to start a business from scratch today, what industry would it be in, and how would you go about it?
Yes, but actually I think about that a lot. The reason I think about it a lot is because real estate agency specifically is an industry that is always under venture capital attack. Everyone's trying to figure out how we can get a piece of these realtors' commissions. They, and with knowing that, I always have to sort of say, what if one of them? So far, everyone that's tried hasn't been able to do it profitably, but someone ultimately will figure out a better system, right? Whether I'll still be practicing or not, who knows? I just have to be prepared for that emotionally. If someone says the same way Uber did to taxis, whatever, that this could come along. If that were to happen, there's certain things that when I do the 3 columns, boy, we're going all the way back to the beginning of this thing, right? I feel like I would look for, it would be nice for the company not to have my name in it. I think that would be sort of one of the, if I was starting a company from scratch, I wouldn't be called I just was Ron Sitrin, the real estate agent. Right, I became the Ron Sitrin team.
It's very typical.
So it's very typical. And now it's hard to move away from that. Yeah. But I think it would be nicer to not have my name be in the ownership role, or I'm sorry, in the headlights. The second part of it is I understand the service model really well, but I don't. I've never sold a commoditized product, but I have learned how to make what we do, even though it's not a product. I've learned how to understand I've learned how to market it and package it as a product.
And one can argue that real estate is a commodity.
It's very commodity. Right? There's so many. Just look within Long and Foster. There's 10,000 agents.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
I mean, that's just Long and Foster. So there's over 2 million realtors in this country. So everyone has a best friend and a sister or brother that's a realtor. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
So my feeling is, I would look for a business that I thought was bumping along and making money, but never really learned. But the current owner never really learned how to take it to the next level. Okay. Partly because they just got used to doing things a certain way, and it's just been that way for so long, and that the culture and the people just got all comfortable in a rut of what I call a medium success level.
Okay.
My intuition is, and I could be wrong, I don't know, but my intuition is if I could no longer practice real estate and I could find a small business like that and apply to it all the things that I've learned over this past 20 years, but even more so, more condensed into the last 5 years where I feel most of my learning's really taken place, that could I just replicate this whole process of building a successful team again. And that would be, and so whether it was really a product or a service, I don't know that I care one way or the other, but it feels to me that because I am a high relationship type of person, that the ability to sell services would be easier for me than selling a product.
Or like a high-end product where it requires
that requires a lot of high touch, yes.
Yeah. Okay, awesome.
Because that's where you differentiate, really, a big part of it is that, or at least in real estate, that's how you differentiate.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So, being cognizant of your time, we've been talking for over an hour now, I think. I'd like to wrap up with telling us a little more about the Ron Sitrin team. What differentiates you guys, where you're headed, and where people can find you online.
Oh, sure. So I think what's great about the team is the culture that we have, and it's for people that hire us or want to join us. They really step into a high energy environment of people who really care. Where you just know everyone on the team has your back, and it's going to help. It's this idea that by working together, everyone is leveraging off of each other's unique talents, and we can collectively rise to a much higher level of productivity as a team than we can as individuals. From the perspective of a buyer or a seller that's hiring us, that's what they're sort of stepping into, which is the benefit. Is one, it's a team approach, so there's a number of people that can help them, but even more specifically is that the people on the team have individualized and specialized roles. So some people are just really specialized just at getting a property ready for market, getting the contractors in there, the painters in there, and the staging in there. Other people are really specialized, and once that property is ready for photography, just getting professional photography and the marketing of that property ready to go. And we have another person who's just, okay, now that we got this digital imagery, we got to promote it and to the public through social media. Those are 3 different people on our team. And as a result of that, each of them are so good at what they do that they can do it better than just one person trying to do everything can do it. But in addition to that, you have, team members that are specializing in pricing and negotiating and knowing the market. And then we have other team members that are specializing, and once a property goes on the market, just the customer relations of the follow through of how the showing is going, what's the feedback, in addition to from the time it goes on the market, well, once it goes under contract, tremendous amount of paperwork has to happen in that space. Yeah. And we're just holding the client's hand all the way through. So specialized roles is huge. The team approach is huge. And then we are a very, very high touch, high relationship driven organization. So we feel like it's not like just, even though we're selling a lot of houses, we go deep on the relationships with everybody that we get to talk with. So everyone feels like, they may feel like we're their only client because we're giving them so much time, yeah, which is really nice. And as a result of that, what we found is the culture attracts great people. The culture keeps the people, that because we're delivering on our brand promise is that good things will happen. Because we're delivering on that just consistently over and over and over again, we're getting a lot of, that if someone interviews us, even if it's competitive, we have a high success ratio. And then what we find is we also have a really nice referral stream that comes out of these happy clients. Yeah. So this whole cycle just begins to build on itself, which puts more money into the, running through the cycle. We talked about cash flow. Well, that builds up the reserves that allows us to invest again. We talked about, should we be investing more in marketing systems or in hiring an organizational person system. Yeah. But the only way I can do that is because the cash flow is running through the cycle, which then, because of all these good things that are happening, comes all the way back to the culture, which is a group of happy people. Awesome. And that cycle just seems to repeat itself over and over and over again for us. And that's really what it boils down to. And
so where are you guys headed? You've talked about these kind of short-term goals of, hiring, marketing, but kind of, what is that, 5-year plan for you guys or more?
So Kate and I, so the Ron Sitrin team operates in Maryland and DC, and then Kate Ryan and I operate together as a team, and as joint owners of that team over in Virginia. Mm. The employees and the team members, work for both teams simultaneously. It just depends where the property is, whether it's in Virginia or Maryland, or DC. One of the things that we are discovering is that there is a huge need for 2 sets of people that we find have an interest in joining our team, that each can benefit. We're finding there's some old agents out there that are looking to, how can I slow down my business but still keep 1 foot in the activities of selling real estate and making income from it, but not work these crazy hours and crazy weekends. How can I slow it down? What we found is our team structure allows them actually just to literally plug right in and begin to become a member of the team, yet we can take care of a lot of the administrative work for them that makes them look better. In some cases, maybe look better than they were operating individually. We've also found that there's people coming to us on the other end of the spectrum that been doing this for 3 or 4 years, and they're really good at just, if you get me a client, I'm great at servicing that client.
Yeah.
But just finding the next client is a real challenge, especially in today's competitive environment. So we're finding that both ends of the spectrum, people who have more clients than maybe they want, and some who would like a little bit more are approaching us. And we find that that's a big growth opportunity that we feel will have a lot to do with what the future looks like. So we'll see, we'll see.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So where can people find you online?
So the website, ronsitrin.com.
Okay.
We have a Facebook account at the Ron Sitrin Team, Instagram at Ron Sitrin Team, without the just Ron Sitrin Team there. And I always invite people to call. I like talking about success. I like talking with successful people. I like talking to people that are looking to grow. So if someone wants to reach out, I'm here. I'm in DC. I'd love to meet with you.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I've known you for a couple years, and I just love diving in more and more. And every conversation we have, I learn more.
Oh, great.
And it's, like I said, always a pleasure, and I appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Well, when it comes to marketing, you are the guru, so I'm running a ton from you. So thank you as well.